Okay, everyone, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Sam Stewart. I am a health service research analyst here at the Data and Research Center. So I'm very excited to have office hours with you all today. We have a couple presenters that is going to focus on our JAMIA special All of Us Focus issue, Dr. Cohn and Dr. Suzanne Bakken. But I have a few announcements before I introduce our speakers today. So next week, the National Library of Medicine is continuing their series. It's Love Data Week next week, in which you can learn more about how the Researcher Workbench impacts campus libraries. So if you are interested in joining them on February 13th from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time, feel free to scan the QR code there. If you do attend, you do get a 1 continuing education credit from the Medical Library Association. So I'll give everyone a moment to scan the QR code if you're interested in that. Our office hours from January 26th is now posted on the User Support Hub. It was with one of our data scientists, Amon, who focused on SQL, OMOP, and BigQuery. So if you missed office hours last time, feel free to scan the QR code for access, or you may go to the videos tile on the User Support Hub to see all previous office hour recordings. And this is what our office hours is focused on today. So JAMIA is seeking manuscript submissions for the focus issue on the All of Us research program, returning value to communities through innovative approaches for data use, analysis, and dissemination. And you can learn more by scanning the QR code. And we're going to learn more today. Dr. Sue Bakken, who is the editor-in-chief of JAMIA, will be here to answer questions as well. Submissions are due by April 6th. 2024. So scan the QR code to learn more and how to submit your manuscript. So I do want to introduce our speakers today who I've had the privilege to work with many times before. So our first speaker who will begin is Dr. Elizabeth Cohn, who is the Vice President of Health Equity Research at Northwell Health and Feinstein Institute for Medical Science. Dr. Cohn is the principal investigator of the Interdisciplinary Guide Network for Investigation, Translation on Equity, which is Ignite. So if you have joined us for our Friday morning office hours, she is the PI of Ignite, which is a wonderful group. And we do have information about Ignite and office hour, their morning coffee on the User Support Hub. So Ignite is an $11 million grant from the Office of the Director of National Institute of Health of Translational Practice and Data Use by Community Organizations. Ignite advances health in urban communities in New York and helps community organizations use data to improve health through innovative train the trainer events, which I have attended, and they are wonderful. Data picnics and data sandboxes and data playgrounds. So you may know Ignite, like I mentioned, through the amazing biostatistician Shaya, who joins us for our drop-in office hours and other events. So Shaya Mohammed, if you're here, shout out to Shaya. And also today, Dr. Suzanne Bakken is going to present on this coordinated effort with the JAMIA submission as well. And so I'm going to introduce Suzanne Bakken as well. So Dr. Sue Bakken is an alumni professor of nursing and professor of biomedical informatics at Columbia University, where she leads the Center for Community Engagement, Health Informatics, and Data Science, and co-directs Reducing Health Disparities through Informatics. And the pre and postdoctoral training programs. So wonderful fact is we have a couple of her postdoctoral students on our community advisory board here at All of Us. So Dr. Sue Bakken is such a wonderful addition. She is also the editor-in-chief of JAMIA and will provide some information about the special issue. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Cohn, who's going to present more information about Ignite and the way that they have been impacting the program broadly. So Dr. Cohn, you can share your screen and then I will stop sharing.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for taking the time to join us to learn about a little bit about our work and also about the special issue of JAMIA. So I am going to share my screen. Let's see, this should work. And I'm delighted to be here, and I'm presenting with my friend and colleague Sue Bakken, who will join us momentarily. So I think you already know my wonderful team, Nikisa Porquet, Shaya Mohammed, who is a regular on these calls, Ingrid Roderos, who is joining us as an assistant director, Scott Jones, our most recent associate biostatistician, and I also see my co-chair for the publications committee for the program, Brandy Mapes, is on the call. So thank you to everyone who's on the call who joined us here, and also my team for supporting this amazing effort that we're going to talk about today. And you guys, please feel free to chime in if I miss anything. We'd love to have you. So we are going to talk about this special journal of JAMIA that will highlight the return of value of the All of Us data set to communities. And that is not only a goal of the program, but it's also our main goal in the grant for Ignite. So I wanted to give a little bit of context about how we are thinking about returning value, of which this special edition, where we invite people like yourselves across the nation to help us think through the return of value, is sort of the jewel in our crown. But we've been doing work around this for the last two to 3 years, and we'll continue to do that. So the goal of Ignite, which is the interdisciplinary guided network for translation, investigation, translation, and equity, seeks to do these things: to increase researcher access and the return of value, to promote community-based data science through a developed curriculum that Sue Bakken is testing at Columbia, to develop the community-informed scientific roadmap, and then to help community organizations use the data to improve the health of their communities. And just a huge shout out to my team, who was out very late last night in the Bronx, hearing the community in a fully Spanish session on return of this data to communities in New York City, hearing their thoughts on what this data means and what it can do for them. So we have a number of different models that we work in. We sort of cleverly called out sandboxes and picnics and playgrounds and dates to make it sort of a little more fun, kind of like the data date of the National Libraries of Medicine, just thinking about data in all these positive ways. And we do them both virtually and in person. You're seeing pictures of our collaboratory, where we do a lot of the trainings, but we also do them on site in other at locations where people are, and then we do them virtually as well. And the idea here is to truly think about this larger ecosystem, about how the data that people are contributing to, that we're collecting, that researchers are using, how can that be leveraged to make communities healthier? And one way that we do that is through these sort of all linked together health fairs. So I've been doing health fairs for decades. They're a staple in many, many churches, in school districts. Here in New York, we do them. I know they're done in other places. We're talking a little before the call started about people who do, like many churches have health ministries or youth ministries, and they focus on the health of their community. But in this health fair, really thanks to Nakisa's brainstorming around that intersection between data and health, we use the All of Us data set to identify the top conditions in communities, and then provide English and Spanish accessible, tailored health information. And we're working on linking that with screenings where appropriate, and then linking people to care. So we're really trying to get the data to have legs and actions and things that give back to the community. And as Sam said, many of you know us from many of you start or end your week with us, I guess, in the Friday morning coffee series. And there you're able to both get instruction on the data set, and then also have open Q&A with Shaya Muhammad and Scott, both of whom are very knowledgeable about the data set. So again, we're on this larger mission to build capacity for organizations, for non-traditional researchers to use it. And the final part of, well, two final parts of this are thinking about the ways that we can help community organizations use this. So for larger organizations, we think about return of value with the assistance of a biostatistician to help them use the data itself to improve health in the communities. So last night, the team was out with the Mexican Coalition, showing them data and listening to their concerns and their health priorities. And then we also fund each of these organizations at about $50,000. We fund Vision Urbana, who is helping to embed a wellness center in our New York City public housing, which is called NYCHA Housing. So they're looking to embed a wellness center guided by some of the questions that are collected and the data that is collected and curated by the All of Us research program. And then lastly, we want to make sure that we as a program are researching things that matter to the people across our nation. We want to know that that the research that we do and the results that we return matter to people. So we were able to ask the program, and they agreed to fund 9 convening sessions across the nation with different populations to get feedback into our scientific roadmap. And so we did older adults, rural populations. 2 of the convenings were in Spanish. One that's coming up next week is on people who live with a disability. We did one in the Pittsburgh area where they're opening the PEDS microsite. So thinking about how the communities can have input into the scientific roadmap, and also how we as a program can present the scientific roadmap in a more accessible way where people can feel connected to it and also understand that one of our core values of the program has always been to reframe how science is done. So one of the ways that we can do that is making sure that our roadmap, our research priorities, the data that we collect, the research that we fund is all giving back to the community in a way that can foster better health. I just like to also show that there's we are funded by the Division of Outreach and the DEO for engagement and outreach, and so they also have a model, and we work in the areas that the DEO framework outlines of outreach and awareness, education and access, engage to enroll and retain our participants as partners, and then knowledge mobilization. And that is what we do as a person who's funded. So again, we see the All of Us data set as helping to build that bridge between data and community health. And as such, we are very enthusiastic to invite people on this call to help us think of the ways that this data can be used to improve community health. And with that, I will stop sharing, and I hope turn it over to me. I can either take questions or I can turn it over to Sue Bakken.
Why don't we go ahead and go? I will. I'm actually going to stay off camera at the moment. I'm standing in a hall someplace, so not the best. Are people hearing me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, and Sam is going to run my slides. So I'm happy to talk about the focus issue to you and want to give a little bit of background. Next slide. And so the Journal of the American Medical Informatics Association has been around since 1994. I'm its 4th editor-in-chief. We publish 12 issues a year. We're a completely online journal now since 2018. Next slide. I just want to say the topic of this focus issue fits in very well with, I don't see my slides anymore. Do you all still see slides?
Yes, we still see slides.
We still see them.
Okay. So this may be challenging on my part. So anyway, the slides, I expect that is there. Is
I
one
can
that
help you if it's the doing what matters most.
Okay, yeah. So one of the things that was most important to me when I became the editor-in-chief was really in this particular journal to focus on the notion of doing what matters most. And so the topic of the special issue fits very well into that topic, because one of the things I pointed out in that initial editorial was really paying attention to things such as health equity, and of course, thinking about the All of Us initiative, as well as what we're specifically trying to focus on in this focus issue, returning value to communities, ends up being important. Next slide. And I believe this is the one. So just a little bit about the journal. I believe the slide you're on displays kind of the journal's impact factor and its downloads and that kind of thing. So that's just to give you a little bit of background on the journal. Next slide. Does this one talk about focus issues?
Yes, yes, it does.
Yeah. So we publish 12 issues a year, and there's a proportion of those every year that are focus issues. So I give some examples here. We've had issues that have focused on topics such as climate change, health equity. Right now, we're in the middle of a focus issue that's focused on large language models. We'd have some focus issues that have focused on extracting social determinants of health. So we're very excited to have this opportunity to focus one of our 12 issues in 2025 on this topic of returning value to community. Next slide. JAMIA I'm just going from memory here. JAMIA publishes a number of different types of papers. And so one of the most important thing is making sure that your paper type aligns with the particular format. And what happens is most people assume, usually choose research and applications paper by default. But many of the things that I think people will be submitting to this will either fall into brief communications, which are papers that use a formal method, but might not necessarily be broadly generalizable, or case studies. We also reviews and opinion pieces. So I think the next slide is probably talking about return of value.
Correct.
I mean, that
the one that was on before was the the use of the public data browser or researcher workbench by communities.
Sorry, I've never given a presentation where I can't see
that you can't see it. I know. Do you want me to? How can I help? I'll just say, and then we can go. So this one is on.
Yeah, you can give me the title of what slide is being displayed.
That's a good idea. So the first one was about the use of the public data browser or the researcher workbench to health equity, community health priorities, training and building community research capacity.
Yeah. So Liz, why don't you? There's a couple slides that. Why don't you do the slides that talk about the different ways that community value can be returned? I think there's 2 or 3 slides on that. And then I'll go into the specific examples.
Okay. That's
which are on the following slides, which will be examples for each type of paper.
Okay.
So why don't you do the next 3 slides or so? And on top of everything else, I think my phone is dying. I'm locked out of my room.
Okay. Oh no. All right. Well, I'll do these while we do that part. Don't worry. No worries at all.
Okay,
so basically, as I was saying in my presentation, there's a lot of ways that the data can return value to the community, and we hope you'll all help us find even more ways. But it can be relevant to community priorities. It can help inform policy or procedure. We can build research capacity in community organizations that are meeting community needs. There can be comparisons among communities or within communities about an intervention strategy or a health concern. I myself am doing one on guideline, how guidelines are followed. So it offers a lot of opportunities where we can return value to specific communities. Go ahead, Brandy. Let me see what the next one is. I'll do a few.
Yeah, and for some reason, you can switch to me because for some reason I can see them now.
Oh, it is the slide angel. Go ahead. Yeah. So,
Okay,
well,
so,
you go.
so because you're talking, I see the slide is too small. So if you go on mute, I think I should be able to see the slides.
I think, Sue, you put yourself on mute.
But while, yeah, just continue what you're doing.
Okay. So, the examples of the return of value to communities could be engaging populations that are underrepresented from a data justice standpoint, systematic reviews, scoping reviews, tutorials, and methodology around the social determinants of health, electronic health records, different ways of measuring the social determinants and approaches from the survey, and even geocoded data. And I do know that we did see a really great presentation at one of the face-to-faces on helping people define, for example, in this data set, rurality. Like, what does rural populations look like? And I thought that was another good example of how we can return value. You can go to the next slide, Sam. And then just some more examples, analysis of areas that address priority health concerns, engagement to promote research process to promote, as Sue was saying earlier, like a research justice approach, disseminating findings and innovative ways of doing that. If there's some AI aspect to it, I think that's always another emerging field of study, novel methods, and then strategies to raise awareness and build researcher competencies in the All of Us workbench. Next slide. And now we are on the paper types, which Sue had started to talk about. Dr. Bakken had started.
Yeah, and I can talk about that. I remember what these slides are about. So we have a variety of paper types at JAMIA, and it's important that you match what you're doing in your paper with the specific paper type and not just assume that everything is a research and applications paper. And so let me give you some examples on the next slide of research and applications paper. And for these, I picked 3 papers about the All of Us program that have already been published in JAMIA. And one of the ways we distinguish between research and applications papers and brief communications, which are both research, is that if something is a research and applications paper, we expect that it will be probably have more innovative methods, and it also will be more broadly generalizable. And we're always happy to help you figure out which paper type you can submit for your work. Go to the next slide. I share an example of, in the next slide, I talk about a brief communication. Formal research process, just like the research and applications paper. However, they're shorter and tend to be less generalizable. And I'm giving an example of something that we're planning on submitting. We integrated ChatGPT into the lab portion of our class, in which we teach people to use All of Us, the All of Us researcher workbench. People were randomized. We had a formal into use of ChatGPT-4 or not. We had formal evaluation in terms of both quantitative and qualitative. So that would be an example that had formal research processes, but is not necessarily broadly scalable. Next, in terms of thinking about case studies, many of the things we do with All of Us well into case studies, because an example of some things that might fall into there would be a structured process. It's not a traditional research design in what you're doing. So it may be a project that you're doing in your local institution. And so you still would have a structured process. And so on the slide, I give some examples of a few things that could potentially fit into that. In addition to things that would be database papers, we also have two additional types of papers. One is review. And so in this focus issue, it doesn't necessarily have to be it could be, we have three different types of review, more tutorials, do XYZ, give example of that. There's also things which are scoping reviews or systematic reviews. And so those do not specifically need to relate to use of the All of Us data set, but they be on a topic that would be relevant to engaging the public or disseminating your research results that would really inform how that could be done in the All of Us program. And then lastly, we have the fifth paper type is perspective. So that has another slide. And in that, this is typically, perspectives are opinion pieces. And so they're opinion pieces from experts. So if you have some thoughts about return of value to community through All of Us, you might have some best practices recommendation, but you're not really basing it on use of the data or data you're collected. You can submit this opinion piece as a perspective. Then I'd like to move on a little bit to the JAMIA review process. I can say, as was shown on an earlier slide, like our average time to first decision is under 30 days. When you initially submit something, you can either get an outright reject that it's not going to fit with the journal, or it can be sent out for review. Major, minor, or major revision on the paper. Slide look like? I don't know what slide you're on. Liz, can you tell me what the slide looks like?
So firstly, you're a little bit broken up. So I think we sometimes missed a little bit.
Yeah, Liz, okay. Why don't we,
yeah.
Okay. What we want to do is, why don't you take some general questions? I am going to be able to be on my computer in about 2 minutes.
Oh, that's great. Right now, the slide just says accept minor. I can do this slide, actually. I mean, it's the accept minor revision, major revision, reject, and recommend to transfer to JAMIA open or reject. So,
go ahead and just take some general questions around return of value, and I'll be on the Zoom on my computer. I can switch over now.
Okay, that's great. So maybe
Thanks.
take down the slides, and we'll see if people have general questions about it, and then we'll take questions from everyone. Let me ask Nikisa, Ingrid, and I don't see Scott, I see you here, and Shia is probably not, but do you have anything that is there anything I left out, or anything that you would like to add in terms of the return of value discussion, or that would be appropriate for people on this call?
I don't think so. I think it was very thorough for return of value. I do see a lot of people in the chat asking if this will be provided. So we'll definitely share this information. Yes.
Yeah, we'll definitely share the slides. Kiana?
I think we have go ahead.
Sorry about that. So just a quick question. working on something that I think is kind of within this realm. But if we wanted to double check to make sure that it was in fact within the scope of this specific call for manuscripts, is there like someone we could follow up with to kind of double check that?
I think the answer is going to be Sue Bakken, but let us re-ask that question when she's able to rejoin.
Okay,
so
great.
that we get the exact right answer. And we can also, Josh, I believe the actual manuscript is due. So let's double check with her as well.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Go ahead, Ingrid.
Thank you, Sam. I just wanted to add, like what Nikisa was sharing, that one of the things that it's a great opportunity that we'll get submissions respectfully also from entities that are working with like community organizations, you know, and like I think that's also, this is a great opportunity. So if there's any organizations that you're working with that are really like on the community, you're working together, you're seeing things that have come out of, you know, using the All of Us data, and you're doing something in the community, I think that's also, you know, it's great that that's also encouraged.
I think we have another question. So Maya?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. And I think this is in line with what Ingrid just mentioned. So I'm with MITRE, and we're working on a project in the researcher workbench in partnership with FQHC researchers specifically. And the goal is really to advance research focused on benefiting FQHC patients and their UBR communities. So the scoping of this effort is really bringing the FQHC patient voices and their priorities as our scope for the project. The scoping and the methodology development steps for this effort is close to completion, but we are just beginning to do our analysis, data analysis. And there is an aspect of how we work with the FQHC researchers to bring their priorities into our methodology development in the workbench, but it's not complete yet with the full paper and conclusions. But we still thought, given this opportunity, we wanted to get some word out with the value this will provide to the FQHC communities. But I wanted to know if that would be in scope for this round of, in this research topic.
Yeah, and I can say a little bit like this. So we don't publish like research protocols, but we would for this publish, formative research. And my guess is your best fit is going to be a case study, which can be data-based, and it would be important that you highlight, because what I hear you say, like you already probably are generating some key lessons and best practices that would be useful to others. So absolutely. But I would say for this type of work, probably case study is better than a research and applications or a brief communication. Although you could look at also check on brief communication. It just depends how formal your methods have been. If it's been, but either of those formats, I think could work well for you.
So I did look at the brief communication because that was my initial consideration, but it does have the sections that are more typical of a full research paper, just shortened version of that with conclusions and all of that. So if we were to take the case study approach, would you suggest this to be more of highlighting the partnership? How did we come up with the questions and how that brings the FQHC voices versus
and so
analysis data-driven type paper?
You've definitely got the idea, and that's why my initial thought was the case study would work best, because you can create your own process, and so you would have your own structure. So no doubt you would have something like background, you would have an objective of what you were doing, and then you can describe your process in a way that fits what you've done, and you don't really have what we would consider a traditional like a results section, but you might have some findings and some recommendations that would go from it. And importantly, really thinking about how what you're doing broadly informs return of value to communities, such as the organizations that you're working with.
Great.
It looks like we have a
Thank you
question.
so much.
I don't know. Samaya, I see your hand is up.
That was the last
That was
question.
me. I'm going to raise my
Okay.
hand back.
Okay. The hand is still up.
We did
I
have two
can't-
questions, one from Kiana and then another one from Josh Erb. So Kiana, if you want to ask your question again to Dr. Bakken so we can get some more information based on it.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, it was more of just if we wanted to follow up on whether or not, so we have a manuscript that we're writing, there's a project that we've done that I think kind of fits into the scope as far as like the methods that are being used and are not transferable across like ancestry groups, for example, which can have implications for, furthering disparities. And so we just wanted to know if we wanted to follow up on whether or not that this manuscript would fall under the scope of this specific call for papers, like who would we contact about that?
Yeah, and you can contact me directly.
Okay, great. That's perfect
Yeah.
then.
Yeah,
Thank you so
but
much.
it sounds like it, I mean, one of the things we talk a lot in different efforts I'm involved with is for much of what we're trying to do, there's research that is generalizable and scalable. There's other things that by their nature have to be local. And so I think we need to capture that, that local knowledge as well. And some of those that might be, I myself, I work a lot with Latinos, primarily Dominicans, so that's not even necessarily transferable to other Latinos because there are cultural nuances. And so I think the type of thing you're talking about makes sense for this particular focus issue in particular.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And I think there was another question.
Correct. Josh Erb asked if what is actually due on April the 6th, a proposal, an abstract, or the full manuscript?
The full manuscript.
Great. Are there any other questions for Dr.
Yeah.
Cohn, Dr. Bakken?
Yeah, if there aren't, then we'll go back and I'll finish the slides. And we can take additional questions. Okay, as I was saying, in terms of our process with your initial paper there, honestly, it's incredibly rare that anything is accepted outright. The decision of most papers at the first submission is major revision. So most papers have to go back a few times. It could be, if it's not a fit, it could be outright rejected, or sometimes we'll recommend transfer to our sister journal, which is called JAMIA Open, and they do publish some more formative things than we typically do, so that could happen. Next. One of the things that's particularly important for those of you who would be publishing with from all of us, using the all of us data, so not something that's about the process of engagement or that kind of thing. It's going to be critically important that submissions comply with the all of us publication policy, and the policies have to do with both notification of the program that you are submitting a manuscript. It doesn't have to be approved, but the program needs to be aware that you're submitting a manuscript that includes the data. And then there are rules which you can see if you follow these links that have to do with efforts to prevent re-identification. So that means not publishing any data with cells sizes smaller than 20, unless the cell size is 0, then that's okay. And because when you get to those little numbers, it makes re-identification possible. Next. Yes, and Liz was adding the other thing, people who use the controlled access level of all of us do some additional training, and there is a lot of content in that training about issues around stigmatization, and also issues of addressing bias. And so it's very important, and you agree when you sign your agreement to work within the research bench, that workbench. And so we will be looking for that. So this is, not blaming the individuals who might have the disease, and also particular ways that we talk about populations in it. So there's a question I see in the chat. I'll answer it now. There's no publication fee per se. If people want to make their paper open access, there is a fee for that, but there's no fee for submission and review. And so sometimes a portion of our authors choose to pay the open access fee, which means that it is available immediately to anyone. Otherwise, it is open to institutional subscribers, members of the association, people whose libraries subscribe to it, etc. So the open access fee is $4,200. And this is for those of you that have grants. This is, so let's say a couple of things. Sometimes people have it written into their grants. Some people have institutions that that cover this as well.
Maybe if you could put a note in, like maybe we can discuss after this call whether it's possible for us to provide some of that support as well.
Yeah, so I was just going to be curious.
Please don't let that be a barrier right at the minute. If you have an interest, if you're working with a federally qualified health center or community organization, and you have an interest, please let Sue and I know, and we may be able to work together on the back end and we would not want that to be a barrier at this time.
Yes. And so it means there will be many ways that people might already be able to access the paper, but what the open access does is make it, broadly accessible around the world. But the paper automatically gets sent by, because most of this research will be NIH funded, because it's coming through, if it's linked to the All of Us program, that there's a requirement that the journal get it into PubMed Central to make it broadly accessible. And that's an automatic process. The authors don't need to worry about it. We had the question, we're already gotten a few papers, but the last date for submission is April 6th. As I mentioned, our turnaround is pretty quick. Our initial decisions, their plan is, the decision within a month of submissions. Depending on whether it's a minor revision or a major revision, it's 3 to 4 weeks. And what often happens is you might get a major revision first, and then the next one would be considered a minor revision. And so we have papers that take 2 or 3 revisions to get them publishable. But if we really think that your paper has good, has really good content, we'll work with you to get it there. We'll have the final decisions for all submissions by the end of August, and then the focus issue will be the December issue of this year. One of the things that I want to make clear on this is the papers, although the papers will be put into the December issue, which comes out in mid-November of 2024. things are published online as soon as they're accepted. So if you get through the review cycle and your paper's copy edited, that abstract gets into online at JAMIA, and your abstract gets indexed in PubMed at that point in time. So typically, once you have approved the copy edited version of your manuscript, it's generally available online within 2 to 3 weeks. And so this means that it's available for citation. It's available for you to, put on your resume and that kind of thing. So it's out, even though it's not in the issue until December 2024. And so that means there's no kind of penalty for being one of the first papers accepted. And then having to wait till December. It's out as soon as it's ready to be out. And then we place it into an issue, according to because of the special focus. So everyone can see the papers together in a single issue. Next slide. Okay. How about, I think we have a few more minutes for some more questions for the group, since I gave some additional content. I guess one of the things that we will have, people will be reviewed by kind of 3 groups of, so one group will be people who are already on our JAMIA editorial board, which includes about 100 people. We're an informatics journal. But they come from different types of people. There will also be individuals who will come from a guest review committee, and some of those will be from the All of Us program, and they may know a lot about the All of Us data set and that kind of thing. There'll be another group of people on the review committee that will specifically be experts in return of value to community. So regardless of what kind of paper you're doing, we expect you to have a very clear section in how your topic fits into return of value to community. And that's why we have that's why we have the broad definitions of the different ways that value can be shown. But there will be people who will be more in the community side, who may not be experts in the technical part of All of Us or in the data analytic plan, but they will be reviewing it specifically for the return of value to community component.
Thank you, Dr. Bakken. Dr. Cohn, do you have any additional
No,
insight
it's
as well?
so very cool. Thank you, Doctor. I say the same. Thank you, Dr. Bakken. This is such an amazing opportunity. The program is going to be so much richer because you are helping us do this, because you are allowing this to happen. I'm ever I'm like bursting with gratitude.
Well, one of the things I was going to make the point of when I did and Liz and I think Sam are both aware of this, but when I did my job interview to become the editor-in-chief, one of the people on the selection committee asked what I would, what the plan was for All of Us. And so it's certainly been a good dissemination channel for a number of technical aspects, but it's very important because to me, because of my focus on community and that notion of addressing consequential problems, that we take this different angle on All of Us and really emphasize that return of value to community. So it'll be different from the other things we've seen in JAMIA to date. And what I'll say typically happens is if you look through the journal, you may not see, so it's always a good idea when you're submitting to a journal to look through and see, what are things that are similar to what I've done. that might already be in the journal that can give you some ideas of how you might address it. But one of the things that is different about a focus issue than a regular issue is it gives us an opportunity to to publish some things that aren't necessarily things that we would publish every day, because we have a vision of what the focus issue can do. So often what happens in a focus issue is we do publish a little more formative, descriptive work than we might overall in a regular issue. And that's why I've really been encouraging people to look at that case study format and some brief communications in particular, because a regular issue might be heavy on research and application papers, and we certainly expect to get some of those. But it's very important because so much of return of value to communities is going to be local. That those case studies is that I think that's where much of that will end up falling. And we'll since I'll be seeing every paper except for the ones from my own institution, that if you submit, if we like what you've done, but it's not the right paper type for what you've done, we'll tell you that and just say, this seems more a better fit for XYZ. So this is what we'd like you to do to transform that.
I'll also just add, kind of elevate what Sue is saying. I did have a meeting with Jeff Ginsburg, who's the chief scientific officer of the program, yesterday on a different matter. And he was like, what we could really use is what the program needs right now is case studies to help people see how this is going to work. And so we are asking people both to highlight the work that you're doing and then also to advance the science of the program to give us those examples. So I agree, Stu. Like we're saying many of them might fit in a case study, but we're also hearing from program leadership that what would help the program is case studies. So it would be a real win-win if we could get those moving. And of course, your database submissions that also help improve that community are also welcome, of course, but we're expecting that it's going to be a mix.
Thank you, Dr. Cohen. Thank you, Dr. Bakken. I'm going to plug in our support email as well. So let's say you have questions after our webinar today. You can feel free to email us at support@researchallofus.org, and I can route those appropriately either to Dr. Cohen or Dr. Bakken as needed. I will continue to also advertise about the submissions in office hours until the submission deadline. So if you do have questions, we do want you to ask. If you feel there's a barrier to your submission, again, ask, and then we can route that information to them as well. And then Dr. Cohen just put her email in the chat, and then I put Dr. Bakken's email as well. And I'll put that towards the bottom of the chat for everyone.
Yeah, and somebody had asked you to re-show the PDF codes, the QR codes.
Sure, I will do that now.
Okay, somebody asked me to repeat about open access and the NIH funding aren't directly linked. What is linked to NIH is the requirement to have the manuscript go into public to PubMed Central and then to have it released within a year. And so any NIH funded manuscript is required to do that. The other thing we're talking about is if people want it released immediately beyond the subscription base of the subscription base of the journal. And JAMIA is published by Oxford University Press, which is a very big press. Many libraries buy the Oxford University package, so you may see it. You may have it for free from your library, or if you're in an institution that's who has the Oxford subscription,
you would be able to, people would be able to access the papers immediately as well. But the open access is, so anyone in the world could see your paper immediately, regardless of whether or not they have access through their library or their other institution. And that is what is 4200. What Liz was pointing out is, if you have your paper to submit, you want to get it out there, just do it. We'll work behind the scenes with the program to see if there might be the possibility of some kind of, I don't know, scholarships or something, some way that there could be some program support so that you wouldn't individually have to pay. The other thing I would say is, for any of you who are government employees and doing this as part of your job, it's automatically open with no fee.
Thank you for that clarification, Dr. Balkin. I think that answered Jennifer's question. Okay, if we don't have any more questions, I want to, on behalf of the DRC, give a sincere thank you to Sue and Liz. Thank you guys for the collaboration and the way that you help disseminate the All of Us research program at your own institutions and abroad. So if you want to join us for our next drop-in office hours, that will be on Tuesday at 1 p.m. Central Time for registered researchers. And then see our events calendars for the Ignite programs, Mornings with Coffee. And if you have any additional questions, please email us at support@researchallofus.org. And then I can route appropriately to Liz or Susan as needed. So thank you. Please submit. We are looking forward to your submissions. We're very excited.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.